Welcome, Jet fans, to another episode of the Jets Life Podcast. It's Monday, October 9th, and the Jets have just recorded their second victory of the year, improving to 2-3 with a 31-21 victory over the Denver Broncos. A lot to go into this game, as we were well aware. Going into the season, there were some comments made from the Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton, basically labeling Hackett a failed head coach, one of the worst in the history of football, and many other words were said in between that, kind of th- just further emphasizing how bad it got in Denver, um, for what he's what he's taken over, and how he's working to improve it. Well, his improvement. They're 1-4 after that loss to the Jets, and the Jets have improved 2-3, giving Hackett a big boost, a much needed win, a win in which the offense, didn't have its best game, but still had 400 yards of offense. So a pretty efficient day from the offense. You'd like to see it get a little bit more of a spark early on in the game, but they were able to kind of take things over in the second half, starting off with that Brees Hall 72-yard run. But let's get into the game a little bit here. Let's start with the offense. And we'll start with you know the you know the hot topic, as always, which would be the quarterback position and Zach Wilson. So Zach Wilson, pulling up his stat line here, so you can see on the bottom of the screen. Complete about 73% of his passes, and for 199 yards. Did have that one interception late in the game, which could have been a catastrophic item there because at that point we were up by three. Throwing that interception, threw away 3 points. We could have got a field goal in that spot. But you give Denver the ball. It was deep in their territory, but you gave him an opportunity to kind of get downfield and potentially get a game tying field goal. Um, that wasn't the case there. But overall, his game, it's what we've been looking for out of him for quite some time. You'd like to see that interception stay in his pocket, um, or just a little dump off just to keep the clock running in that particular moment in time. But when I believe my last video, I believe was shortly after the Trevor Siemian signing, I talked about how his completion percentage is just unacceptable. You can't win this that's struggling to get to 50% and is over 70%. Sorry, I'm losing a little bit of service there. All right, sorry about that. Yes, he has been over 72% in his last couple of games. So you like to see that improvement, and even per attempt of this last game 7.65. And if you're throwing close to the sticks on every play, which is what that yard per attempt dictates, I think you're doing a good job as long as you're completing the passes though, and that's what he's doing in this game. um, you know, I think that's a lot of the good there. Getting his completion percentage up, he looks more confident. He's staying in the pocket. I believe that protection seems to be holding up a little bit better. This offensive line third game together, and more on that in a little bit there. But the protection seems to be holding up. He seems to be a little more confident in what he's doing. I saw on that last drive, the one he threw the interception on. There was a third down, and you saw him go left to right, find Conklin up the seam, throw it to him, and then Conklin was able to fight for an additional 10 to 15 yards. It looked like on that play. So you are seeing some strides from Zach. You are seeing some progress, improvement from what we've seen from him in the past. Um, and you would just like to see that gradually improve as the season goes on. This is the tough part of the schedule. Let's all take that into consideration. These first six games, when we walked into the season, we knew this was going to be a gauntlet. Even this Denver game, which I know Denver isn't great, but on the road in Denver, there was a little bit more fire to this game, because of all the comments that were made in the offseason. So, um, and don't think Sean Payton didn't want to kind of prove himself right, and kind of give a better coaching game in this particular game. That wasn't the case. The Jets were able to get the job done, and Hackett was able to get 400 yards of offense against his previous team. So good route there. Sticking with the offense, and moving off from Zach Wilson for a moment here. Brees Hall in his first, I mean, well, the Buffalo game was a huge game as well, but his first real workload game, 22 rushes for 177 yards. That's about an 8 yard per carry average. Helped a lot by that 72-yard touchdown run that I mentioned earlier. Here's a guy that's, we saw what he did last year as a rookie in a very small sample size, and we've seen, what he did in that Buffalo game. The last few weeks have kind of been a little mind-boggling as far as why he couldn't kind of keep the ball rolling a little bit more in that direction. Doesn't help when you're falling behind to a lot of teams early, which but you he's a guy. I mean, he had 3 catches for about 17 yards this total as well. Brees Hall, you just want to see the Jets kind of incorporate him more in the offense because that's really the only thing I can see as far as like building Zach's confidence up and keeping this offense moving. Because from a skill position standpoint, I mean, he's the only one that can really do anything, get his hands on the ball on a consistent basis. Garrett Wilson is being blanketed on every single play, and in a couple of occurrences, the Jets were able to get in the ball, but those only happen off of play action. In play action is only going to work if the running game gets going. So Brees Hall is going to be a big piece to the Jets' success on hold us to limited yardage and guess on the play action won't be there, and they will just cover Garrett Wilson all day long. On any given play. Somebody else got to stand up and make a play for this offense. But for this game, Brees Hall, huge game. We all remember the last time he was here, had that 80-yard touchdown run, and then shortly thereafter, the season ended for him with a torn ACL. So it's a little bit of a redemption, a little bit of a comeback story here for him. And just based off his play early in the season, kind of gets in that conversation for a comeback player of the year. We all know Damar Hamlin is probably the odds-on favorite, but if Brees Hall puts together a fantastic season like he's on pace for, I mean, can definitely kind of look in that direction and say, does he deserve some votes? But will it be enough to kind of supersede Damar Hamlin, who we all know the tragedy that happened last season with him, and the fact that he's able to get back on a football field is a miracle in its own right. So, yes, so the Jets are able to get the job done on offense, 400 yards. It'll put 31 points in total. A lot of that coming on a defensive touchdown by Bryce Hall. So we had 2 touchdowns in this game, both by Halls. Brees Hall got one, Bryce Hall got the other. 5 field goals by Greg the line, and then we're able to get that muff punt that got us in field goal range early in the game to start things off for offense. And the offensive line, which I did mention earlier, um, kind of holding up the fort, played a good game, but there are some concerns now with the offensive line, mostly circled around AVT. He left the game with what was labeled as a calf injury. Um, you heard Robert Sala's post game conference. He didn't seem overly confident in the status of that. They go over for further testing, which almost seems like a little bit of a Groundhog Day type of situation with the Aaron Rodgers thing. But there was a report, I believe by Adam Schefter earlier today, that it is believed it's just a calf injury. There's usually going into that MRI, more or less whether it's an Achilles injury. So, we talked about the full circle thing with Brees Hall in the Denver game. AVT also got injured in that Denver game and missed the rest of his season. So you'd hate to see a situation where AVT misses an extended period of time or ends his season here in the same venue, same place. But from what I've read, it seems optimistic that he'll miss some time, but nothing significant if indeed it's not an Achilles injury. So fingers crossed, prayers for AVT that whatever the injury is, he's able to recover quickly and get back to form as soon as possible. sticking with the offensive line, Becton, he was in and out of the game multiple times. I think there was at least 2 times that he was in and out of the formation. And there was one point where they showed him on the sideline, and, and the uh, trainer working on his right leg, looked like he was working the knee area, which we all know back. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so well, not that spot there again. So yeah, so back then was in and out of the huddle, in and out of the formation a couple times. Knee injury. Looked like the trainer was working on that right, but he's putting together so far a pretty good season. Moving over from right to left after the Dwayne Brown injury, and that's where he wants to play. And you know, no one wants to stop him there. The offensive line has been playing better over the past couple of weeks. So you'd like to see it kind of continue to progress in that direction. ABT missing some time is going to kind of hurt the continuity in that aspect. But Max Mitchell came in and played pretty decent on the right side. So I was pleasant to see, especially after his training camp didn't look too promising in the limited times that we saw him. So good to see him come in and kind of show a little bit of form of what we saw in his rookie year. He did look like he could potentially turn to a serviceable right tackle down the road when we saw what he was doing last year before he missed the remainder of the season. Um, but yeah, so offensive line staying intact is gonna be key. We'll wait on some news on AVT. Fingers crossed, like I said, and prayers up for AVT that he is able to get through this injury as quickly as possible and as healthy as possible. So that's all I had for the offense. Let's switch over to the defensive side of the ball here. Um, Jets defense came in, and I think we can all see the havoc that they wreaked on Russell Wilson. 4 sacks. Not that doesn't include the safety. The safety was actually forced on an intentional grounding, which would have been a sack had he not thrown it away. But it was an intentional ground that led to a safety. They had the 2 takeaways. They had a fumble on the strip sack by Quincy Williams, and then the fumble on that the Broncos were trying some sort of trick play and or muffed um, drop dropped the ball. And I think Jefferson was right on top of it, if I remember correctly, as far as who recovered the ball. And then also on that strip sack by Quincy Williams, you had Bryce Hall was able to pick it up and return the ball for a touchdown. Bryce Hall had a pretty decent game. I mean, I think another guy that we've all kind of just because of the excellent play we've seen out of DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, and Michael Carter at the 3 cornerback positions. I think we all had a little bit of a higher standard of what to expect out of the cornerback room. But the Jets schemed this up correctly. Bryce Hall. The thing I would say about a corner is if you don't hear their name too frequently, they probably had a pretty good game, unless they take the ball away, and then you're talking about having a great game, which he did do in this case. Was able to recover the fumble and return it for a touchdown. Um, you know, Overall, I mean, when you consider missing Brandon Eccles and when you consider missing DJ Reed, obviously being the big loss for that secondary, Tony Adams in his return to the team over the past couple of weeks, there's been a little bit of I think we're seeing a little bit of a different player than what we had seen in the preseason. I don't know if his confidence isn't there yet just because of missing some time or what the case may be, but this Jets defense was able to kind of keep things kind of hold up in very short intermediate yardage. Russell Wilson did not have much confidence throwing the ball downfield. That they were only able to throw for 169 yards. That includes the sack yardage that was lost. So this Jets defense just continues to progress. When you look at this team, Quincy Williams has by far really kind of reached that point where he's in that conversation as far as the team's best defensive player. Obviously, Sauce is in there. Obviously, Quentin Williams is in there. Um, and if Quincy Williams is not one of your top 3, I mean, I guess Mosley in there too, but I think he's reaching a point where he might actually even be kind of eclipsing CJ Mosley. His speed from sideline to sideline is just ridiculous. Every single game, at least the games that we win or at least the games that we're competitive in, this guy makes an impact hit that you can feel, and I live down here in Florida. I feel like I can feel it from here. It's like an earthquake when he hits some of these guys. Um, and then these plays, like the 2 sacks on that final drive were both by him. Huge plays when we need them. The Jets put the they didn't put the ball in his hands, but they put the onus to get the W on him, and he took full advantage of it, getting the first sack, which at that point in time, Denver was down to the last timeout. If they hadn't expired, or if it, oh no, they actually didn't use it yet at that point in time, and then the strip sack to kind of ice the game as Bryce Hall returned it with 29 seconds left. Again, this is something that's been kind of a recurring theme with this team as a whole is these slow starts. That's got to get corrected. Um, I'm not sure what happens for games where you know this defense getting gouged out by the screen game. That's exactly the case. What was going on from a defensive standpoint? The game was going to be run defense, and if we were going to beat them, it was going to be by running the football. But this there's got to be some level of surprise or something because whatever's happening are fully aware of what's going on, and the Jets aren't as prepared on their end. So that's something I like to see kind of get improved as we continue through the season. We're going to want to steal some wins. That's got to be the case. Big test coming up here against Philly. But just a couple last minute things here. I'm gonna agree. So just want to stay with a lot more positive than negative, considering we've had so much negative over the last 3.5 weeks. But I just wanted to hit on some of the negatives here to conclude this recording. Um, going back to Zach Wilson and his game, a few areas that really need to be cleaned up in his part. Obviously, that late game interception to Patrick Surtain. Ball could have been placed the defender from making an interception. Would have been ideal. Get it kind of hit on the back shoulder instead of the front shoulder, where it kind of fell right into the laps of Patrick Surtain. And then the late half clock management situation, it just seemed very very lackadaisy, very slow moving. I mean, I feel like when you see these things happening late in the game, you see the team running to the line, you see the quarterback kind of hustling, like kind of getting stripped to the line by himself, but you saw him kind of like just walking up with like as the clock was ticking down 3, 2, 1. Like I know he's on a different trajectory than what we would have liked. You know, had a okay second year, and now in this year he's kind of working his way up, building his confidence. But that's a situation that's in the mind 100%. He is in year 3, and some of these situations, like, you know, as far as building confidence and stuff, that's one story, but situational, like, a situation where there's 10 seconds left on the clock and your guy got tackled. That kind of freaks me out a little bit. Happen again. Guys, and all right, sorry about that, I'm back. But yes, so that late awareness, that late end of the half situation, just not knowing, not having the wherewithal to kind of get the team to the line of scrimmage and clock it in the half with a field goal. Um, Overall, it all worked out for us in the end. But these are situations against teams that are winners, teams that are, kind of hold their own standard in this league. Those things aren't going to win games. Denver is a team that's in shambles right now. They're a team that's, you know their future does not look bright in the at least in the short term, based on what they have going on over there. It does not look bright at all, and the current situation is not looking too great either. So against a team like that, you can get away with stuff like that. But then again, we're not a team that really can take advantage of having that many mistakes. So these are things you'd like to see Zach clean up, which this coaching staff has done a pretty decent job of getting him from where he was to where he is right now. Does that mean he's the guy? Does that mean he's even going to be our guy for the rest of the season? Who knows? This is a week by week type of situation. But this week, he was able to play efficient. 73% of his passes, 7.65 through the air on average. Um, would like for him to get that interception in his pocket again. But at the end of the day, it's a Jets victory, 31-21. Hats off to Nate Hackett. Was probably a really tough week for him. Going back to the place where he had many horrors last season, but surrounded by this team and this staff, able to kind of get on his back and give him a victory, much needed and a well deserved victory for this team. If you haven't already, please take the opportunity to like and subscribe to my channel. All your views and all your likes and all your subscriptions are highly appreciated. Once again, let's go Jets.